Let's get started with air manipulation. Being an ability as abundant and freely shown as the element is based off of, users of Aerokinesis can create, shape, and manipulate air. Now I want to see how many of you get pissed off with this next part. Even though we all know what air is, I'm still going to do what I do, so just let me get through it. Air is a common name given to the layer of atmospheric gases and various compounds, mostly oxygen and nitrogen, surrounding the planet Earth that is retained by Earth's gravity. So with that information in mind, if anyone possessed this power, it would mean that they would not only control the wind, but any air movement that's relative to the surface of that planet. Air is such an important factor in not just determining and controlling climate and weather, but generating the force of most ocean and freshwater waves. Wind itself occurs because of the horizontal and vertical differences in the atmospheric pressures that includes breezes, squalls, gusts, whirlwinds, zephyrs, gales, tempests, and hurricanes. All of those were just fancy names for powerful bursts of wind. And in most cases, users of this ability will be portrayed in a rock, paper, scissors dynamic. You know, where one power is superior to another while being inferior to another, while at the same time being equal to a completely unrelated power. Humans can sure get creative, can't we? But before we try to breeze through this power, I have to warn you guys. Yeah, I know, again, that those that have not hit that subscribe button won't be able to feel the sweet, gentle stream of air that this superpower is blowing at you. Now, do I have a way to verify this? Well, no, but I'll just assume that you all decided to take the path of least air resistance and hit that like and subscribe button. Just huff and puff and blow that subscribe button.
Pause.
But if you don't need my advice, then hitting that share button will definitely at least make it to where you can breathe. But if you're just here for the applications, users, and users of this power, then skip ahead to this time. But if you want to hop on this twister of info with me, then hold on to your dogs because, we ain't in Kansas anymore. Something that has existed before we even quantified what it is and what effect it has on our culture, it wouldn't be that much of a stretch to say that most human history has been spent trying to gain mastery over this ever-present but elusive element. The natural force that we call air, or wind, has been and is used for transportation and power, and in more lighthearted recreational activities, as well as predicting weather conditions. While in ancient cultures, Greek, deities referred to as the anemoi were a group of wind gods, each in control of a specific direction that they can make the wind blow in. Along with other cultures, it seems that most air and wind-based deities are associated with other deities in the same pantheon that either share control over the element or have a very close association, like Shinto deities Fujin and Raijin, who represented wind and thunder respectively. The previously mentioned anemoi, I know I said that wrong, or Egyptian deities like Amun, the wind god, and Ra, the sun god. In some translations, they were separate deities, in others, they were the same deity. And that tends to be the case for most wind deities. They don't normally stand out on their own. Air is the element of freedom. Dang. Yeah, that's deep, huh? Okay, here we go again. Dang, that quote is kind of dope. I'm a nerd when it comes to stuff like that. I mean, it's so simple, but yet at the same time. Anyway, okay. This extremely common and popular ability has been portrayed in endless ways in popular culture. From shows like Captain Planet to other shows like Avatar: The Last Airbender. It seems like there's always something new or fantastical that air can accomplish. In the same way electricity and fire are shown being able to do, well, anything. You just don't pay air attention because you can't use it to blow up a building. Or can you? But there's some truth to this. Because air is used for everything, and just like the other elements of the world, it's something we really can't exist without. But it goes so much deeper than that, because without air, the other elements couldn't exist either. At this point, you guys are probably thinking about all the known mediums that are classified as elements, and you're most likely agreeing with me. That's cool and all, but I still want to feel important. So I'm going to explain my point. Take a look at fire, which I've done a video on, and surprise, surprise, it's pretty well known that no flame can exist without oxygen. Where does oxygen reside? In the air. Well, what about water? Check my video on that. Because the combination of hydrogen and oxygen, like I mentioned earlier, only exists in the air. Okay, good points, huh? Well, what about electricity? Well, with no air, there's no medium for the electric discharge to travel through. Yeah, you didn't think about that, did you? air is a perfect insulator against electricity. Plants and earth? Well, we know from my video on plant manipulation that flora requires multiple factors in order to survive and thrive, and the major part of that is contained in air. I think I made my point, but I want to be a dick, so I'm going to continue to beat this dead horse with the same stick. You want to communicate with somebody? Well, unless you practice miming it, it can't be done without air. You want to track an animal like a certain world-famous mutant? Well, too bad. Without air, there's no scent. Well, what if you have asthma and your best friend throws a bag in your face and tells you to breathe? You can't do that either without air. As a matter of fact, that conversation wouldn't even happen because you'd both be more likely to drop dead. So, when I say air could be considered the most important element, you kind of see why. Now, this power is probably going to be the easiest to break down and do an analysis of. It's pretty well known that we classify air as a gas, meaning that the molecules of that medium are spread apart wide enough that they can slip past each other in any direction in a much more free and fluid manner than liquids. Because of that, air has always represented or at least been a synonymous stand-in for the concept of freedom, in the very same way that flight relates to freedom, because in addition to freedom, air symbolizes breath, life, communication, and even more ethereal concepts, such as spirits. All of these associations require freedom of a sort. Not being able to communicate freely can cause issues that restrict the user a great deal. Example of this is the legend or myth of the Tower of Babel, or Icarus. Without freedom in life, it'll become dull, boring, and repetitive. And you know the saying, stagnation leads to ruin. Or maybe I made that up myself. And without the capability to breathe freely, you're restricting your ability to bring in fresh air into your body and rejuvenate your cells. You see how I brought it back to air, right? This element, and as a byproduct, the power, is always locked in a constant struggle with the rule of perception trope, stating that air, which you can't see, most of the time, doesn't really exist unless attention is drawn to it. For example, a teleporter not being affected by the surrounding air he just teleported in the middle of. Being able to breathe while you're intangible, or stopping time, but you can somehow still move around in the frozen air and breathe. Or even worse, being trapped in the vacuum of space and somehow not having the air ripped from your lungs because of the pressure. Although odd, there is some truth to this, as air, just like electricity, is something we don't tend to notice until it's no longer there. And because air is invisible to those that display or witness these abilities, it can often be confused for telekinesis or as a hand wave to give the character the ability to fly without having to explain it. Users of this extremely popular ability are portrayed to be carefree, lighthearted, and hyperactive, or in more serious cases, poker-faced and indifferent. With the freedom to flow like the wind means they carry the same trait of unpredictability, and in some cases, if the user has experience, they can play the role of a wise, enlightened, or trickster mentor. But don't make the mistake of underestimating them, because while wind can cause gentle breezes and gusts, it can also flay skin from bone, which is where the trope razor wind comes into play. With all that being said, users are more often than not portrayed having high speed, high dexterity, moderate to low attack power, as well as low to moderate defensive capabilities. But this usually depends on how you want to portray the user, as wind is known for carving holes in mountains, as well as ripping up man-made foundations and settlements. It's not a very common occurrence that you'll find someone with this power just being plain evil, as users are normally too individualistic or fickle to align themselves with any position that could deny them the right to act as freely as they want to. Common colors associated with this power are white, well, mostly in the West, and green, which is more common in the East. Or, if you want to get creative, you can choose any color, just give it a transparent-like quality. It should, be translucent like the wind. Now, this power is going to take forever to get through, but I'm here for a reason, so take a deep breath and bear with me. With the power to manipulate air comes the natural ability to attack with, defend with, and control air with air attacks, or manipulate other objects by controlling the air around it with Aerotelekinesis. And with that comes the standard ability to attract and repel objects through the control of air vectors. The user is able to detect outside sources of air completely separate from themselves in a minute fashion with air detection. They're also capable of interacting with air in the most basic of ways without needing to give it solid-like properties with air interaction. And since you can interact with the air, it would make sense that you're able to clean the air of any pollution or contaminations with air purification. While more gifted users are capable of taking that technique to the next level and actually solidifying wind with air solidification. This gives the user the added bonus of being able to create shapes both simple and complex with air constructs. And since they share such a connection with air, they're able to generate their own source of wind with air generation. And with the power to create air, they should be able to increase the amount of force produced with air pressure generation, which can crush and destroy their target or impede their actions via crushing. And if they're capable of producing air, the inverse should be true, allowing them to absorb air from an individual or their environment with air absorption. That was a little on the nose. Which can be used to reject all the air in the surrounding area with vacuum creation. So following that train of logic, when you absorb air, you are in effect taking it from others, which will suffocate those around you, causing a form of deoxygenation. And with the ability to take in and generate air, it should give you a level of sensitivity far beyond simple detection, allowing you to not only sense air, but any changes or disturbances transferred through the currents, no matter how minuscule, with air current sense. This is basically a stronger version of air detection I mentioned earlier. And heck, let's throw in enhanced senses because that's the umbrella term for that power anyway. The most gifted users, however, are capable of taking deoxygenation to the next level and completely cancel whatever effects air or wind is capable of producing with air negation. But if you don't want to go that route, then share the breeze with others by force and use air to assist whatever combative capabilities you possess with aerokinetic combat, which will grant them a faster form of movement by negating air resistance and the ability to produce more force because you can solidify the air. So let's add enhanced condition to that as well. They can also use wind in order to spin really fast, really fast with accelerated rotation. This can grant the user the power to create tornadoes or other hazardous wind conditions, or if you're feeling especially kind, summon air that can heal others with healing wind. And put yourself back together exclusively through the medium of air with aerokinetic regeneration. Or if you don't feel like having that kind of responsibility, then you can duck it completely and conceal your presence, becoming invisible within the medium of air, and air is everywhere, with air invisibility. While the best of the best, those that have mastered this ability to its fullest, are capable of enhancing whatever locomotive capabilities they possess via aerokinetic flight, or the more visually appealing and arguably cooler air walking. Users can take sensing currents to the next level and gain paranormal insight information from wind, similar to divination with aeromancy. You can turn your life energy into air with air aura, as well as transform your physical form into that of wind with air mimicry, and use the same power on an outside target, completely changing its molecular structure with air transmutation. Well, what are you going to do with all this extra air? I have an idea. Why not use it to shift your position instantly from one location to another via aeroportation or air portal creation? These abilities accomplish the same thing, just with a stylistic difference. If you want to go full God mode, just whip up some crazy currents that go every which way but loose, creating natural disasters with weather manipulation. That's not even close to being all the applications and associations, as wind comes with the ability to manipulate sound, whether you amplify or nullify. It can give you an immunity to electricity, as you can just create a barrier of air that acts like an insulator, like I mentioned earlier. Or you can even compress air to a point where it erupts into an explosion more devastating than the most well-crafted bomb. But those are abilities for another video. And there you have it, air manipulation in a nutshell. This is an ability that is only limited by the user. This highly sought after power can put even the most basic user in a league of their own if they're creative enough, but it still has its fair share of weaknesses just like every other power. Unless you have the capability to create your own source of air, you could be stuck only controlling existing sources. That's not too bad if you're on a planet. You might also need to stay on whatever planet you reside on, as air doesn't exist in a vacuum, meaning no space trips. If you're engaged in conflict with a flame user, one wrong move can amplify their flames, and higher level electricity users can overwhelm you through pure force by supercharging the atoms in the air and then using that against you. Shoot, you might be unlucky and face off against the one person who has aerokinetic immunity. And lastly, the user's own knowledge, skills, and talent will determine how far you go with an ability like this. So get creative. And now, with all that out of the way, it's time to place this ability on the scale. Air manipulation is exactly what it says on the lid, literally, right there. It says it right there, air manipulation. Anyway, but there's a lot more that you can do, and not so much less that this power is capable of. If you guys want a more in-depth explanation of the applications or associations, just let me know. Most of the elemental videos I'm going to do a part 2 on anyway, because there's not enough time to put all the information I found about them in just one video. So, on a scale of 1 to 10, the Shey scaling system gives this power oh my god, there's no S word for air. Okay, I got it now. On a scale of 1 to 10, the Shey scaling system gives this power streamtastic 9. Thanks for watching. You guys think of any more applications for this power? Jot it down in the comments section. Start a discussion. The index does not grow without you guys. I'll be back with an entirely new power, breakdown, and analysis fairly soon. Deuces.